Hi, my name is Céline Gareau-Brennan, and I am a business librarian at the Cameron Sciences, Engineering, and Business Library. This is the last and third of 3 videos for Biz 201 for the semester of fall 2021. If you have any questions about this presentation, don't hesitate to reach out to me. All contact information can be found at the end of this video and in the accompanying PDFs for these videos. I will be sharing a PDF version of these slides that you can refer back to. In all the presentations I do, I hope to save you time and money in your researches. More specifically, by the end of these videos, I aim to make sure you know the following. And in this video specifically, I'll be covering learning outcome number 5, knowing where and how to find information on industries, markets, competitors, operating a business for your entrepreneurship challenge. In order to accomplish these goals, these 3 videos cover the following. And in this video, I will cover resources for your entrepreneurship challenge. Now, let's talk about the research that needs to be done for your entrepreneurship challenge. To find the material needed to succeed in this assignment, we recommend the following steps. Make sure you do both your primary and secondary research. Make sure you know how to find the Biz 201 LibGuide and database tutorials on the library website. Use the library and the internet for secondary research related to idea generation, industry research. This is where you want to see video number 2. Market research, sources for competitive analysis, sources for operational analysis, and of course, make sure you cite your sources. For the rest of this video, I'll be walking you through all of these steps for the library. Now, keep in mind that in business, there's no magical place to find all the information, so you sort of have to play detective and use all of these sources to find the information that is most relevant to the argument or point you are trying to make. In a lot of this work, this means way more than just copying and pasting parts of the report, but rather citing and using them in the context of your paper. Also remember that if you're starting business in an industry that is more innovative or niche, there may be less resources specifically for that industry, for that subsector. So you may have to look at different reports, you may have to pull things from different industries and different markets. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we talk about business research, you may hear the terms primary and secondary research or sources. Primary resource is new research carried out to answer specific issues or questions. So it can involve questionnaires, surveys, or interviews with individuals or small groups. For Biz 201, primary research could include, for example, calling a landlord to find rent costs, contacting farmers about food costs, etc. Secondary research makes use of the information previously researched for other purposes and publicly available. This would be market research reports, articles, demographics, any information not initially collected by you. And this is where the library can help you. Now, just a note about secondary resources, a lot of information is proprietary and difficult to find. There are many facets that you need to consider. You will need to use several resources to get a complete picture of what you're looking for. There is also importance in viewing this information critically and also to make sure you view the information in the context it was produced. So for example, if company information is produced by the company itself, you may get a much more positive spin than news articles about that company. So this is a really excellent project that you will have to do to create a really good, excellent entrepreneurship challenge project. You'll have to do both primary and secondary research, and where the library can really help is secondary research, but this alone may not answer all of your questions. In this step-to-step guide to finding resources, I recommended we start with the library, referring to library guides and tutorials for databases. In the first video, I talked about this at greater length, so I will just be be doing a short recap here. These subject guides are ways librarians help guide you to the information you need in different fields or even for specific classes. So the fastest way to access business information on our website is to go to our homepage and then select subject guides. Once you've selected subject guides, select business guides. As you can see, we have different guides on the left-hand side for different topics you may have to research during your time in business school. We also have a specific subject guide for Biz 201. And note that on the right-hand side of the guides, you will see a guide for citation, instructions on how to access Harvard Business Review articles, and a link to tutorials for some of our more complex databases. And this is what the Biz 201 library guide looks like. Now let's start with ideas on where to find library and internet sources for your idea generation. Idea generation for the Entre Challenge is so dependent on your group and their interests, but some things you might want to consider are trends, news, creative idea you have, a new value you could add to a product or process, something that is maybe being done elsewhere but not here yet. I want to emphasize that you don't necessarily need to come up with something completely new. You could use an existing business idea and see if it fits here in Edmonton, or something you've seen elsewhere that you found really interesting. For example, e-scooters weren't in Edmonton until recently. Now they've really taken off. One other word of warning, watch out for apps. I asked 3 questions about apps, and if you can't answer it, I would recommend you just rethink that idea. So who is going to build the app? How to market the app, and how will you make money out of the app? And so just keep that in mind, and really keep that in mind while you're looking at this. And I would just recommend perhaps staying away from apps, because it always is more complicated than it seems. Now, for my example through this, I will be using a marijuana dispensary because I know that is not a topic that is allowed for you to do as a student. So if you look at our Biz 201 guide, you may see the tab for business plans. Here we have some resources that would help you come up with some great ideas. Additionally, here are some business websites that would be useful to scan. News and articles are a good source for getting ideas. You can get access to the following databases through the library that aggregate news. So that means it brings together news from many different sources. So for example, we have Factiva. This is great for international news. Business Source Complete, really good for business news, includes Harvard Business Review. We have CBCA, which is great for Canadian content. Then we have ABI Inform, which gives you access to the Wall Street Journal, and Press Reader, which is great for Canadian news. It's not so good for historical stuff, but it's good for our purposes. In the second video for the individual research assignment, I spent most of the video showing you industry resources. And so this is very much a recap. I really recommend you go back and watch that second video for industry research. So there are a few industry research tips specific for this assignment too. So watch that second video in this series. Consult the U of A library guide, specifically the Biz 201 library guide and the industry guide. Remember that a lot of new business ideas might not fit neatly into one industry. So this is important to think about. So in this context, think of a few industries that intersect with your idea. There is less information on some new industries, some innovative industries. Don't limit it yourself to just industry reports in this case. Look for articles as well. As a reminder, these are some of the library databases you might want to use for industry research. I go into more detail for each of these in the second video. Just one important call out, the market line advantage. Just a reminder that the industry reports have the Porter's 5 forces analysis in there. So if that's something you're looking for, market line is the place to go. Now, next, let's talk about market research, which is a significant portion of the research needed to be successful in completing your entrepreneurship challenge. In this case, your market research focuses on answering the questions: who is my customer, consumer? What are their needs? Where are they located? What is the size of my market? What is the forecast of my market? We have a few library and web resources recommended to answer these questions in your specific scenario. Here I will once again use the marijuana dispensary as a case study, so the specific resources I use might look different than the ones you use. I would recommend that you definitely need to look at market reports. Market reports often discuss who your consumers are and their needs. They may also include details about the size of the market and forecasts about the market. As a note, some industry reports we saw earlier in this video and in the second video, right before this one, have a lot of information about market forecasts or size for a particular industry. So it is worth taking a look there too. So here's a short list of the most commonly used databases to find market reports. We'll be looking at each in just a little bit more detail. So first we have Passport, which you might remember is a good place to find industry reports as well. As a reminder, Passport is best when it comes to consumer goods. So it won't include everything, but consumer goods, it's got really great coverage. So when you're in Passport for market research, I recommend looking under the consumer tab, and then selecting the option that is most relevant to you and your project. We also have Mintel Reports. Mintel Reports offers market research reports, and each report combines data and analysis of the competitive landscape, market share analysis, and consumer profiles. In Mintel, you can search using keywords about your industry right here. So let's say search cannabis. As you can see, it also suggests keywords for me and categories, and then even suggests a possible title that I may want to look at. You can also, in Mintel, look up any reports related to specific demographic of consumers. So let's say my target audience is Gen Z. I would select it, and then I could look up all reports related to this demographic. So these reports are really great to get to know more about your consumer and their needs, as well as information related to market share too. Then we have Statista, which has statistics related to specific populations when it comes to consumers, in addition to information and stats related to specific industries and companies. When you are looking at Statista for market information, depending on your industry, you might find information about your consumer as well as numbers about where your consumers are located and the size of the market. But it's for Statista, it's very dependent on the industry in question. Here you can see I looked up cannabis users, which was a suggested keyword that relates to the specific query, and I get a lot of results that seem quite relevant for my market research. Although here is also marketresearch.com academic. This contains over 500 market research reports covering in numerous sectors. So some sectors specifically that they cover quite a bit is beverages, food, office supplies, personal care, and telecommunications. To search here, I recommend just using a simple keyword. Right here, I'm using cannabis, and you can see my results right here using that. Once again, you can browse by category or even do an advanced search using the left-hand side. Although there are some market databases I just showed you do include location and demographics, there are some web and library resources that are specific to answering those questions of location as they relate to demographics. These include Statistics Canada data, such as the 2016 census. They also have data specific on household spending that can be really useful in the case of getting to know your consumers and how much they're spending on certain things. There's also the census profiles from the 2016 census. And this is information from the 2016 census of the population for various levels of geography, including provinces, territories, census metropolitan areas. So for example, Edmonton, communities within Edmonton, and census tracts, so neighborhoods mostly. We also have the municipal census. This is for the city of Edmonton. This is a 2019 municipal census. that has age range, gender, dwelling unit status by ward and by neighborhood, so it can be really useful. There's also Simply Analytics, and this is a great database that allows you to create reports and thematic maps using demographic, business, and marketing data. I've included it here and on the PDF that accompanies this video, a link to the tutorial for this database. And then there's also Polaris Intelligence, and Polaris Intelligence has Canadian demographic information about income, occupation, lifestyle, education, ethnicity, household expenditure, etc. And once again, you can use a mapping feature to do this. I have included it here and also on the PDF that accompanies this video, the link to the tutorial for this databases. Since we have more comprehensive tutorials for these two databases, I won't be going into detail here on these, but I do think it's important to note that these are really useful databases, and just have a quick look at these really quick tutorials. They're about 5 minutes, and then you're off and running and using these databases. I do want to show you the level of detail available even in the municipal census right here. So if you do go to the municipal census and you go to the home page, you can scroll down and click View Neighborhood Results. So for example, here I select Garneau as a neighborhood, and I get many demographic data about the population in this neighborhood. Remember that in conducting your market research, you may also want to use social media. Specifically, this is really good for informal surveys with your peers. What do they use? Where do they live? And this is an example of primary research you could do. There's also Facebook groups you could look at, pages and associations, and even tweets. So some things to definitely keep in mind while you're doing your market research. In addition to market research, you may want to find sources when it comes to your competitive analysis. Although at the library you have many databases that have company information, most of these are for large public companies, and they may not be your primary competition if you're starting a small local business. And so I recommend using Google a lot for this. You also probably want to consult the University of Alberta library guides, the Biz 201 guide and the Alberta and Edmonton Business and Economics guide. And this is where you do want to use and develop and deliver primary research. So this is where you might want to talk to business owners in that industry in Edmonton, for example. Here is the Biz 201 guide for competitive analysis. An underrated resource for this are also the online yellow pages, because you can look up a type of business in a specific location and see what else is out there. So this can be a really just quick trick for you to kind of come up with your competitors in a local context. In terms of information sources for operational analysis, this also enhances your project too. So operational and information you may want to gather includes the following: cost of renting for a store or a facility, licenses, where to manufacture your product, manufacturing cost of your product, cost of supplies, equipment, etc., transport, orders, marketing, staff and training and wages. So in terms of looking up this information, once again, the library itself is not necessarily the place to go for this. Instead, this is where you probably want to look at Google. And you also probably want to look at local, provincial, national, and international associations and governing bodies, especially, for example, if you're looking at the minimum wage. That would change from region to region and is important for you to look up. And this is once again where you want to use primary research. And this is where primary research can be as simple as talking to other business owners in your industry. Now, here is the Biz 201 guide page for information about suppliers too. So this is where you'd go for information about suppliers. This is a page for the financials, operating statistics, and labor costs. And we do have a guide page 2 for licenses, taxes, and grants. So this gives you some links. Once again, these are not links to library resources. These are mostly links to web resources that you can definitely take a look at. Remember that for what you need for this section is so dependent on your specific project. So for my example of marijuana dispensary, I will need a relatively large of information from the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis. So that's just an example of something I would pull in my example, but I would need a lot more as well. Now, we're coming to an end here, and in the first video, I covered citations in a little more detail. So if you have any questions about citations, go back to that video. But since citations are very important, I'll do a short recap here again. So let's start by addressing why we cite. So this is to adhere to the U of A's code of conduct. This is to give credit where credit is due. So it allows your audience to do more research, and it makes your argument stronger too. If you're wondering if you should cite, here's an easy chart to follow. You're required to cite something when you mention it in the body of the writing, so in your text, as well as including all the sources that you cited as a list at the end of your project. I have included links to specific citation resources for you. Once again, the business specific citation guide is the one I recommend the most for you because it breaks down how to cite things from some of our most commonly used business sources, including even some of the databases we saw in this video. The Purdue Online Writing Lab is really great when it comes to any exceptions. This is not the U of A, but this is a really good web resource for exceptions. We also have the citation quick guides. This is great for articles and books that you might be citing too. So be sure to check out those resources. If you're still stuck or have more questions, please contact us at the library. I've listed some of the ways for you to get in touch with us. Most of this information can be found on our website under the Ask Us tab on the right-hand side of the homepage. As a reminder too, as starting September 7th, I will be holding office hours from Tuesdays from 12 to 2 in my office in the business building in office 4-22. This is a great time if you just have a question you want to run by me. You can definitely pop in, but otherwise there's other ways to reach us if that time doesn't work for you, and even other ways to get a meeting with me as well. So thank you so much for listening to all of these videos, and best of luck with your Entre Challenge assignment. Remember that you can always contact me with any other questions you have at this email. I also have a feedback form linked here, which I invite you to fill out since it really allows me to improve future library sessions I deliver, such as this one, just making that content even better for students. So thank you so much for listening, and best of luck with this project and the rest of your degree.